there will appear sometimes objects in the environment where they would see there is no need to change them. For instance, there is no need to change the existence of a tree, because the tree shows already a kind of nature, authority, which works normally not in the wrong way. But with the people's influence on the tree, by insecticides, for instance, or artificial fertilizers, the tree already starts changing and starts perhaps sometimes going the way of cancer. So, but also this illness can be healed by human intention. I must get ready to see in a special time with a special display, that's all. And I cannot care for everything, it must be more like this, sure. One has to think about when people coming, for instance, from top to bottom, how they are confronted with an appearing teacher. That's true, that's a normal thing. Every architect, every road builder, every apple tree constructor has to think on these things. Because there's no possibility to put in environments which need a lot of space in the different dimensions. So I could reduce only this show on more sculptural forms, you know, which are more blocks. I can only display things which were in crates and get ready with this structure.
Well, you know, when
there should be perhaps a better situation for such a piece to perceive it. Like it is normal in life, it's very difficult to find an ideal place for an apple tree, for instance, you know. That's almost impossible. At last you put the apple tree somewhere, and then
it works.
It stands. Sometimes the problem of the bearings of the buildings gives a reason to put. For instance, there's the 3 tons on one point.
Right.
There was the only point beneath the column to put them. But for instance, this was the only place to put it.
Yeah.
Because on the ramp it was the heaviest. They are located on bearings under the floor. But normally the chronology. People can see the objects and can have their own imagination about the reasons. But I think one must not see so simply towards the object. I think perhaps one should ask about the imagination of the object, or which line of intuition or inspiration lies in what you call the density, or sometimes the looseness of the thing. If you look towards the Rocky Mountains, the things are extremely dense.
Yeah.
But it started not in this form, it started in a fluid form. This bust-up relates to the reality of being born in a certain area and in certain circumstances. There is fat inside the tub, lying there like a molding or sculpting hand, the kind of hand which lies behind everything in the world. It represents creativity in an anthropological sense, a human sense, not just the creativity of artists. The stress here is on the meaning of the object, a solid, material thing invested with energy of a spiritual nature. Antlers, even more than horns, show the deep mystery of the bloodstream flowing from the interior and continuing to circulate out on the head. The stag's antlers are the emanation of its entire venous, hormonal, and nervous systems throughout a yearly cycle. They start to grow in early spring and are shed at the end of each year. For me, they relate to the inwardness of a feeling being, the soul power, like blood in an artery, represented here by the hair's blood in tubes extended by long copper feelers or antennae.
Perhaps in the earlier works there was more the broader aspect of tales. There was sometimes more a narrative element in it or a mythological element in it, where the figures represent different powers. For instance, they appear animals, women, they appear some tools like crosses, you know, and also small wooden sculptures and flexible stuff.
This sculpture, Virgin, relates to woman and female element in general. To express spiritual power and potential, I tend usually to use the female figure. This is because I believe in the female generally as possessing strengths in every field which have been underused in the past. I would characterize them as a greater openness to the possibilities of the future. The basic ability to bear children, for instance, extends to many other areas of productivity where the male is more limited. If you consider male physiology, you will agree that the male is anatomically squarer. By comparison, the female is less petrified, less tied to the earth. Above the head of the figure is a square frame, a completely abstract element. This frame represents a balance toward the male, toward the cold, hard, crystallized, burned out clinker that I would call the male intellect, the cause of much of our suffering.
Yeah, I wouldn't call them symbols anymore. I would call them forms, simply forms. And forms and substances, you know. Yeah, forms, and the forms consist of a special constellation of substances, you know. For instance, this violin consists of iron, copper, and felt. Yeah. How this idea of a battery functions in his own imagination. This means only a special kind of meaning of radiation of substances. Yeah. For instance, the leading ability of the copper. So almost the female character of the copper and the more martial character of the iron. And when they come together, they work as a battery, for instance.
Yeah, and then so it's a neutralizing factor of the felt.
Yeah, at least a kind of muffling character to take it. A sucker.
Conducive.
No, it works like a sucker like sometimes. A sponge. Yeah. You know. It absorbs, you know, yeah, fine. And, you know, every etage represents a kind of big world, in a way.
Every layer.
Every etage could mean a humankind's geniality or personality. So you can can go on in the objects, but it isn't necessary. You can also stop with the formal aspect. Yeah. You can also stop with the formal aspect and take a joiner's ruler and make a consultation about the measurements. It's also already a kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
You come with a balance, made a weight of this stuff. Already this is also a kind of how one can look towards sculptural intentions. I think it needs a kind of sensibility to see them. You know, that needs already a kind of sensibility. Perhaps in a way people have to switch some levers or knobs in their consciousness to look in another way than in a traditional way towards the things, you know. That's not at all a Henry Moore show. Or it's not it's also not Salvatore Dali. It is another thing, and people must change a bit, you know. If you look against l'art and flinches, you know, of pig's bellies in connection with art, there's another interdependency, you know. I'm not interested to eliminate the materialistic analytic methodology out of the discussion. I want only to enlarge the discussion towards other aspects of meanings, science, meanings about art, you know.
People have to consider ideas as the artist considers sculpture, to search for the forms created by thinking. When I speak about thinking, I mean it as form. There's a difference between soft, organic forms and hard, crystallized ones. The search is for a solution between these extremes. By this I mean the evolutionary step towards a new kind of freedom. I believe that the human being is fundamentally a spiritual being, and that our vision of the world must be extended to encompass all the invisible energies with which we have lost contact, or from which we have become alienated. The Grauballemann of the title was found in about 1952 in the peat box in Denmark, where he had been buried in prehistoric times. The sculpture thus describes something that survives through time, an eternal thing called field character, which mobilizes human powers in a physical and transcendental sense. This power field is interpreted as the upper, middle and lower regions of the human body, expressing thinking, feeling and will. The skeletal form is made of copper in a series of concentric rings. Copper is used to suggest the quick conducting potential of the human body as a receiving or transmitting antenna.
Let's make a mark here.
Good enough? Beuys. Beuys. What's the name of that piece? What's the title?
Font.
Fond, yeah.
Double font.
Double fond.
Single font, double font. This is with a lightning
Rod.
What do you call it?
Well, lightning rod.
Yeah.
For receiving electricity.
Yes.
Does this then become a source of power after it receives power?
Surely.
And does it transmit power?
It transmits power, but it transmits already power by looking at it, you know?
Yeah.
It's a kind of
visual exchange.
Also. Yeah, not visual, also acoustical. But it stresses first is a kind of basic power lying here on this zone, kind of gravitation. and lightning things, you
Yeah.
know, electricity. I would like to install a simple railway here in this building. You see, down, and a very heavy lorry on it, you know, a trail lorry.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Perhaps a heap of fat in it, and it go up and down sometimes, perhaps. And it's a permanent conference, you know. I have no time to produce another installation here for the next future. I must do things now where the political heat is going up, you know. Yeah, sure, they are political tools. So I understand them also, you know, and that's why I told you that I look for things like experiments in a laboratory. But I need them also as kind of weights. Sometimes, if you speak about a social idea, people speaks about everything is blah 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 blah. Right. This kind of sculpture is as a very invisible, surely hearable, perceivable stuff, but sometimes it is too light, you know. Sometimes you must bring in skeletons in it, structuring, architecturing in it, and giving an example of a special craft in it, handwork or visible object, you know. Otherwise it flows away, you know. Or it is not heavy enough on earthly conditions, like you are standing with your foot on the earth. So you need a kind of foot, you need a sole, then you make a shoe on it or sock on it, you know. This also works in a way as a weight. Because we live in earthly conditions, we have also to work with weight. And on the other hand, we have to work with ideas, who are very light, very fine substances, and go over the border of substances at all, and get a kind of pure spirit, pure generation power. Therefore, I think we have to make some kind, what one calls hook, line, and sinker, you know. You must have a kind of sinker, or a kind of anchorage for ideas.
You seem to suggest that human beings have a kind of supreme power in the world as a force.
Yeah, sure. To whom you would relate it otherwise? To whom you would delegate it otherwise, this power? To whom?
Nowhere.
To elephants. Sure, also very important people.
Yeah.
You know, I founded a political party for animals, you know. Therefore, this political party is perhaps the biggest party existing in the world, because all animals are their members in this political party for animals. And elephants, hares, and rabbits, mice play a very important role. My name is Joseph Beuys. That's a hare, you know.
What do you mean by that? A hare?
A hare.
A hare like a rabbit?
No, a hare can never be a rabbit. A rabbit is a rabbit which goes to ground, you know. Hare makes only its form, a little mold on the earth, you know.
A mound.
So a hare is a real other animal than a rabbit. There are differences, you know.
Distinctions.
Distinctions.
Fine distinctions.
And distinctions. I have a sensitivity surely to the physical world, but this doesn't distinguish me from any people. Everybody has a sensibility towards the physical world. First he has to stand on with his feet. Then he has to take, for instance, material to feed, to nourish himself. So this doesn't distinguish me from other people. So I'm part of everybody's existence, living in a world as a human being, or even as an animal. So I said already, I'm a hare, you know, with long ears, not so long today. Therefore I took as a substitute this head, substitute for ears, you know. I am, like all the other people, an individual with a special kind of ability. But this distinguishes me not from the existence of any other people. Every person in the world has a special ability, and out of this ability he produces, you know, he works. So I have surely another methodology, another kind of work and labor, and surely also another kind of ability than any other person in the world could have. So this characterizes me as an individual, but all other people are also individuals. So it is therefore logical that they do other work. They make things in another way. Some people, for instance, don't speak, don't only work with their hands, and so their labor and their dignity comes from this kind of language, you know. The other people speak with their mouths, with ideas like I'm now speaking to you. So my proposal is to show what can get out of a humankind's production in the general work towards the future, where humankind has to solve very important problems, not only for survival, also to mold up, to produce a new planetarian future. So I participate in this way, in this general work, where everybody is involved to bring up the ideas. No, I try to show how the generation of my ideas were developed towards a wider understanding of art, being related to everybody's needs and to every problem appearing in the social body now.
It was in 1943. My Junkers 87 was hit by Russian anti-aircraft fire, and I crashed in a snowstorm in the Crimea, in the no man's land between the German and the Russian fronts. I was found in the wreckage by a clan of nomadic Tatars several days later. I had been completely buried in the snow. I remember voices saying voda, voda, the word for water. Then the felt of the tents and the dense, pungent smell of cheese, fat and milk. They covered my body in fat to help it regenerate heat, and wrapped it in felt as an insulator to keep the warmth in. My personal history is of interest only insofar as I have tried to use my life and myself as a tool. Our present stage of materialism and all the things we experience as negative in our present society has to be seen as an historical necessity, a crisis point that sets in at every stage of history and which we can observe in the past. I experienced it in the war. The positive aspect of this is the start of a new life. The whole thing is a therapeutic process. For me, it was a time when I first realized the part the artist can play in indicating the traumas of a time and initiating a healing process. By that I mean that I saw the relationship between the chaos I had experienced and the process of sculpture. Chaos can have a healing character if it is coupled with the idea of open movement to channel the warmth of chaotic energy into order or form. Through this theory, I began to see how structures could be created which relate to every kind of life and work. The outward appearance of every object I make is the equivalent of some aspect of inner human life. The rubberized box here came out of a period of crisis and expresses my inner condition at the time. It expresses the need to create a space in the mind from which all disturbances are removed, an empty, insulated space. Within this empty space, investigations can take place, and from this concentration, new experiences can emerge. This is a prerequisite for every experiment with the theory of sculpture, the principle of the insulator.
So this is a theory of sculpture, or a wider understanding of art, an anthropological understanding of art, with the possibility to take in this understanding of art and creativity all the problems or all the power fields existing in humankind's existence by spiritual powers, bodily powers, but as far as it is related to spiritual powers, consisting in thinking powers, feeling powers, will powers, and as far as it is related to these questions and the powers existing in the social body generally, there existence the power fields of freedom, the power fields of equality, and the power fields of brotherhood, or what one calls sometimes socialistic or social behavior. The last one is the area where the problem of economics appears. If you see it more in a traditional way, if you change the whole structure and come to a more anthropological understanding, or one could also say towards an ecological understanding of the whole thing, there appears an integration between economy and art. And so that is what I try to develop. And the history of this try to bring it up to surface is in a way this show. It gives a kind of history of my own methodology to push the necessity to transform the world radically, to change the understanding of money, the understanding of state, the understanding of law, economy, labor, freedom, ability, creativity, art, radically.
That is precisely what the shaman does in order to bring about change and development. My intention is to stress the idea of transformation and substance. It could be described as the deepest root of the idea of spiritual life, the transformation of life, nature, and history through concrete processes. The charge of the 12-volt battery is transformed to 20,000 volts in the inductor, so it is a high-tension system capable of creating big sparks. Any deposit of material awaiting the process of transformation becomes organic machinery. The generation of energy means the production of warmth, and hence the link with the idea of social sculpture. First of all, we must extend the definition of art beyond the specialist activity carried out by artists to the active mobilization of every individual's latent creativity. Then following on from that, the molding of the society of the future based on the total energy of this individual creativity. My concern is for the transformation of substance rather than the traditional aesthetic understanding of beautiful appearances. If creativity relates to the transformation, change, and development of substance, then it can be applied to everything in the world and is no longer restricted to art. The idea of contact with material implies this wider concept of art and of human work and activity in general.
Yeah, it's the same thing for me, you know. This is why I stress the idea of the substance. Because if you stress the solidity of a block, yes, you distinguish a block from life. And as more as I take flexible things or organic stuff and work like a kind of chemistry, it fuses together with other areas. And there the discussion appears towards the problems. There appears the melting point where the things could be regenerated, where there could appear a new life, and before a new life is planned, or the plan is done for a new organization towards life in its different forms of life, you have to think about a kind of theory, how to do it. And then you have to find the phenomena existing. You have not only to make an intellectual structure without having considered the phenomena and their needs, so the analytic necessity exists further on to observe what there is exists, and where is the illness, and where is the lack, and where we fill up it, and in which direction we have to build up and to sculpture up the future. So again, the whole problem appears as a sculptural problem. To go on with forms, you know, to form. Then you could also say to formulate, out of the ideas. But then you go back to the point from where the idea springs. Then you are on a border between the invisible world and the visible world. One could now stress the idea of metaphysic existence. But I have not the need now to stress this point. I will only say it comes from a kind of invisibility and gets transformed by thought towards the visibility, towards the physical use of tools. Your tongue, your mouth, your larynx, your lungs, the wind which goes to your windpipe to speak. So the idea of sculpture for me starts with the molding up the idea.
The voice is a vital transmitter of energy and a direct means in the sculpturing of thinking forms. For me, it is the word that produces all images.
There is preponderance. Preponderance.
When I use language, I try to induce the impulses of this power, the power of evolution. If you enlarge the understanding of sculpture to the point where it has to do, above all, with human thought, then the embodiment of this thought in sound and language becomes part of art. Unsculpted sound, without semantic information, like this, sculpted sound, words with semantic meaning and logical content, sounds that have never been heard before, like the plopping of fat. Everything in the scale of possibilities is involved, from noise to concerts. The sound of the piano is trapped inside the feldskin. In the normal sense, a piano is an instrument used to produce sound. When not in use, it is silent, but still has a sound potential. Here, no sound is possible, and the piano is condemned to silence. The relationship to the human position is marked by the two red crosses signifying emergency. The danger that threatens if we stay silent and fail to make the next evolutionary step. Such an object is intended as a stimulus for discussion, and in no way is it to be taken as an aesthetic product. It is vital that humankind should slowly learn to speak, should come out of its dumbness, and this applies above all to the man in the street.
It's very exciting and a bit extraordinary, and I'm coming from Sweden, and I must say it's for a Swede it's very confusing but very exciting. Well, it's a sort of impression you have of the art crowd in New York, that it's very much seeing the right people.
I saw one man who kicked an object, a sculpture. Oh, not in a nice way. It was not one of these not one of these. I think it was the wooden one. I don't remember. I was so astonished to see that he did kick the thing. I was shocked.
I think that most people are not going to say, I think this or that. I think most people are just confused. And I think that's good. I think that's the whole point.
Everything must be expressed. Negatives like thalidomide or Auschwitz, as well as positives. Even those things which still lie beyond language as we know it. a new substance that is both evolutionary and revolutionary.
Why did you decide to make art when you were younger?
Because I felt that the art is able to change the world. If you find a way to look at the art in a real other way than in the bourgeois understanding of the art and in the traditional understanding of the art, being restricted to a kind of cultural behavior existing on the feuilleton pages in newspapers or existing only in museums, institutions, between art historians, between art educators, between all the caretakers who care for the whole installations of art, the museum's problem, you know. And if you break through this traditional niche existence of the art, which has nothing more to do with the needs of the people generally and with the problems which are there on the table now, as long you are out of discussion. But in the moment, if you transform the idea of art, I think this idea of art is the only discipline which touches the epistemological theme of humankind's consciousness and the problem of freedom, and how after this idea of freedom as a basic kind of power could build up everything if the people would do it. Everybody is an artist. Everybody who lives in a capitalistic system has to use the institutions. The life consists of contradictions. There is also a contradiction if you run through the streets on state ownership, because every street belongs to the state. Mm-hmm. But within these contradictions, one can mold up real, radically other features of society. And you see, like me, that the so-called artists are sometimes, or very often, only interested in their private way of life. And their privilege is making fame, making money, making extra position in society. Surely sometimes one cannot avoid this, like me, but there I feel the duty to push even stronger the whole idea of the necessity for radical change. Mm-hmm.
Is the political machine in operation tonight?
It is.
It is?
It's a beehive.
Do you see it working?
I see it working. So everything depends on the people. Nothing depends on the institutions. So if one is stating that the state is guilty for misuse of things, I reject it. I say the people is guilty because they don't change it. Yeah. They don't rebel against it, you know. There is no other possibility than to look towards the world in every situation after the idea of the art. That there is no a fixed object, that every object could be changed by the intention of the people. So this implies not to believe in the object as fixed points in the environment, that every position could be changed by the intention of the people.
I saw a piano with a Red Cross sign, and the whole aura reminded me of something around the Second World War, something pragmatic.
Big flashlight and a roll, a bedroll, something?
Hunk of cheese or something.
I didn't see the cheese.
With a knife in it. Sort of a survival kit on sleds. Impressions of survival in the war.
Rescue.
This is an emergency object. An invasion by the pack. In a state of emergency, the Volkswagen bus is of limited usefulness. and more direct and primitive means must be taken to ensure survival. The most direct kind of movement over the earth is the sliding of the iron runners of the sleds. Each sled carries its own survival kit. The flashlight represents the sense of orientation. The felt is for protection, and the fat is food.
So I say we are guilty. I imply myself to the people, so I don't never make a border between me and the people and telling them I'm better than you. I say, when I make the statement, the people is guilty for the condition of the world, I'm implied in the whole thing, yes. But with them together, I try to overcome this laziness in consciousness, you know. So I try to stimulate the powers of opposition and of creativity to build up a new planetarian existence, not only on Earth, also in heaven. You know?
Humor is not something that can be taught or cultivated. It's an elegant solution, and this can be overlooked if one's understanding of life is not expansive enough to project beyond personal problems and feel a kind of cosmic laughter running through the whole structure of life and the forces of nature.
But you must not tell my wife some stuff that I pay your money. Because I'm always parting money to this side, and to this side, yes. And everybody feels that I'm going bankrupt. Perhaps one must go back to the situations that normally in the moment there's almost nothing of an idea. There's almost nothing of an idea between politicians, between authorities, between the whole given structure of the social order. There appears almost nothing of an idea to overcome such a structure. As an example, how to overcome the private capitalistic system, or how to overcome the so-called state monopolistic system of the communistic countries. There is almost no idea. Therefore, for me, exists the necessity coming out with another understanding of the transformation of the social body and show the people there is a solution. There is already a proposal, and there exists already a model how we could transform the whole world. After the idea of freedom, after the idea of equality, and after the idea of a new understanding of economics. I say, the profit can never be a goal for economics. The goal of an economy can only be to fulfill the needs of the people all over the world. So, and my proposal and my model shows the real other thing. And that's not utopian. What's running in the officials is utopian, because we will never care for the needs neither of people nor of nature. But the profit has to be eliminated. And it will die if people go on with a kind of ecological thinking within the social body. Because there exists not only the biospheric dimension of the ecology. The most important thing as a kind of premises for every other ecology being related to air, water, animals' life, people's life, and so on, would be an ecology of the social body. How the idea of freedom and the necessity and the need which people has for freedom and the need which people has for equality and the need which people has for brotherhood function together as very different power fields, bringing up a real other level of the social body. And as long this kind of ecology is not trained, as long we will have the damage and the exploitation of the resources within nature, and surely with the consequence of the exploitation of humankind's health, humankind's ability also. So this runs the way towards down the drain, you know. What I try therefore to set up is a kind of regenerator. So as these are generators. So in the beginning there is a kind of a stimulator visual object, tactile object. Sometimes you can also the object eat like honey, you know. So it brings up a kind of shifting towards a very normal thing, like in the kitchen sometimes, or in the laboratory.
In the biological
It is not the traditional understanding of art in a way. It shifts away from this.
With honey pump, I'm expressing the principle of the Free International University working in the bloodstream of society. Flowing in and out of the heart organ, the steel honey container, are the main arteries through which the honey is pumped out of the engine room with a pulsing sound, circulates round the Free International University area and returns to the heart. The whole thing is complete only with people in the space around which the honey artery flows.
So the people is free to work with these phenomena as they want to do it. So that's the condition now. But the most important thing is that parallel to these forms appear organizations like the Organization for Direct Democracy or the Free International University.
Yeah.
I think that was a parallel thing, you know, to these engines, you know. I spoke already about the necessity to translate the idea of ecology towards the life substances of the social body. So to work with the necessity to develop a social ecology. This is existent in the social movement within the Free International University's activities in West Germany and also in the Netherlands and on other places. And it exists generally in the under one roof organization of the so-called Die Grünen, the Green movement in Germany. Our normal and permanent forum is outside parliamentary processes and lies in the everyday work within the workshops and within the enterprises and within the outer parliamentary political activities, you know. So this is also part of an ecological understanding of the social body. And from year to year, people is more hot, more keen to hear more about this solution model to an ability of economy, to a creativity economy, you know, to an art economy. So more and more people get interested in this kind of economical model, which is in fact integrated with the idea of art.
What do you see?
And this means art for me.
Yeah.
Ever art, which has nothing to do with these economical questions, for me, cannot be called art. It will never lead to a good result, even in a painting, if you have not your roots and your whole nerves in the question of the economy and the law and the democratic questions appearing in the social body. This will never lead to a good result in art if you are further on living in this niche outside the world. Principally, I think things are sharper in Middle Europe.
Yeah.
Things are more vital now in Germany. I think the changing of some principles for the next future, I think, will appear in Germany or perhaps in another region of Middle Europe. Will not come up to the surface here in the United States. I think the circumstances are very heavy-footed here.
Heavy-footed?
Heavy-footed circumstances, you know. Everything goes so slow and everything is so very good in installation and everything is so slow, so slow, very slow. So I find it goes all very, very slow in the United States.
Yeah.
So and I think there is, I did not see even one American person during this whole time. I think perhaps the American doesn't exist. It is still in the melting pot situation, and perhaps therefore everything goes so slow. And therefore, nevertheless, I love everybody here in this country. I cannot see one single American person. I think perhaps the American doesn't exist, must come one day, must appear one day. Perhaps Americans cannot appear without the idea of the social sculpture.
Each one of us has a creative potential which is hidden by competitiveness and success aggression. Environmental pollution advances parallel with the pollution of the world within us. Hope is denounced as utopian or illusory, and discarded hope breeds violence. It is no longer regarded as romantic, but exceedingly realistic to fight for every tree, every plot of undeveloped land, every stream as yet unpoisoned, every old town center, and against every thoughtless reconstruction scheme.
And some pieces are even now not really exploited by their dimension, even not for me, because they are always still living in a kind of experimenting state, you know. So will come out perhaps next week another thing out of this arrangement in the laboratory, you know.